Let's start with a really tough question. How do normal, civilized people, people like you and me, end up doing truly terrible things? It's one of the most haunting questions of our time, and today we're going to explore a pretty profound and frankly unsettling answer.
So, the famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung wrote this right after World War II. He had this gut feeling that the catastrophe of the war wasn't just about politics or economics. He sensed it had deep psychological roots that were smoldering away long before any shots were fired.
And that's really the heart of the problem, isn't it? It's incredibly unsettling. When you look back at the darkest chapters of history, it's not just a handful of monsters. It's whole communities of everyday people who either participated in or just looked away from horrific acts.
So that leads us right to the big question. It's a mystery that really challenges how we see ourselves, our friends, our neighbors. And to figure this out, Jung argued we've got to stop pointing fingers and looking for some monster out there.
All right, so let's really get into this, because according to Jung, the answer isn't out there in the world. It's inside of us, in the vast, uncharted territory of the human psyche.
You see, for Jung, the unconscious wasn't just some dusty attic in your mind where you store stuff you don't want to think about. No, it's this living, breathing, active part of you. It's autonomous, meaning it does its own thing, cooking up dreams and impulses without your permission. And it contains the potential for everything, all the good and all the evil.
And tucked away inside this huge, unconscious world is something really specific that Jung called the shadow. You can think of it as the dark continent of your personality. It's kind of like the psychic junkyard for all the parts of ourselves we don't like or want to admit are there.
I mean, think about it, right? To be a decent human being in society, you have to learn to suppress certain things. Your raw selfishness, your aggressive impulses, those secret desires. So the shadow itself isn't necessarily evil. It's just everything that our polite, conscious personality has decided is unacceptable and shoved down into the basement.
And this is where Jung throws down a real gauntlet, a pretty provocative one. Now get this, he's not calling you a fascist. That's not the point. What he's asking is, can you find that potential inside yourself? It's a challenge to face your own shadow head-on.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. Jung believed that if you really want to understand the evil you see in the world, you have to start by having the courage to face the potential for it inside your own heart. The secret, the thing we don't want to admit, is that the monster isn't just out there. It's in here. It's a part of our nature.
So where do we go from here? What happens if we just ignore all this? Well, Jung had a pretty stark warning. If you don't deal with your own inner darkness, it doesn't just vanish. Instead, you project it. You basically throw it onto someone else. And this is the engine behind scapegoating. It's a psychological process. First, you deny some trait you don't like in yourself. Maybe it's greed or anger or insecurity. Then you spot that exact same thing in someone else or a whole group of people, and boy, does it make you furious. And finally, you attack them for it. It's a dark kind of genius, really. You get to attack the thing you hate about yourself, but you get to feel righteous while you do it because you're convinced it's their problem, not yours. And this simple little mental trick, it's been the fuel for some of the absolute worst tragedies in human history. We find scapegoats, right? The witches, the Jews, our political opponents. We make them carry the weight of all the darkness we refuse to see in ourselves. Our inner problem becomes real-world violence. Okay, so if just trying to be a good person by shoving down all the bad stuff is actually super dangerous, then what are we supposed to do? Well, Jung's followers suggested a complete overhaul of our moral compass.
Well, first, let's talk about the way we usually think about this. A psychologist named Erich Neumann called it the old ethic. This is pretty much the morality most of us grew up with. Be good, don't be bad, push those dark thoughts away. But the problem is, when you do that, you're literally splitting your personality in two. You've got your conscious, good self, and then this hidden, angry shadow self that you're pretending doesn't exist.
But then there's this new ethic, which is a totally different way of looking at it. See, this approach isn't about pretending to be perfect. It's about becoming whole. The goal isn't to be some pure, flawless saint. It's to be a complete human being who takes responsibility for the entire package, not just the nice, shiny parts we like to show off to the world. And this quote right here, it completely flips our moral compass on its head. In this new way of thinking, good isn't about getting rid of the bad. Good is the act of integrating everything, of bringing all the pieces of yourself together. And evil? Evil is what leads to that split, to denial, to pointing fingers, to projection. So you might be thinking, okay, this is some interesting psychology from like 100 years ago. Why should I care about it now? Why is this so urgent?
Well, Jung believed he was living in a time when evil wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. It was out in the open, a real force in the world. And he was convinced that our old strategies, pretending that evil is something out there that has nothing to do with us, well, they just weren't going to cut it anymore.
So what it all boils down to is this. For Jung, the best defense we have against mass hysteria and large-scale evil isn't some new political system or a more rigid set of rules. It's individual self-knowledge. It's about relentlessly, unflinchingly knowing who you are, all of you. The good you can do, and yes, the crimes you're capable of.
And that leaves us with a pretty challenging idea to chew on. If he's right, and every single one of us has the potential for both incredible goodness and terrible evil, what does it really mean to be a responsible person? It suggests that being good isn't something you just are. It's an active, ongoing, and honestly a really brave process of getting to know your entire self, warts and all.